All right, so we're good. We're good. We're good. Everybody was fine with that, so that you can hopefully use pieces and parts to help you with your book tour and book promotion.
Yeah.
So I'm going to turn it over to you and let you start, but just share with us what you want us to know about you and what led you on this journey to write the books.
I love that question and I hate that question at the same time, all the time, because I never really have what I think is a good answer for why I wrote it or why I write anything that I write, except to say that I'm a 9/11 survivor, as you all know. And before 9/11, my journey of life was all about the corporate ladder and the money and what I could achieve, and this lifestyle of success that I thought I was supposed to be a part of. I had this vision in my head about what success looked like for me. And I worked, really hard to get there. Um, and then after 9/11, all of that changed because the things that I valued changed. It's an interesting place to be in when you find yourself knowing that you're a mortal being, right? That your time on this earth can end at any moment, and anything that you say or do in the next few minutes could be the last thing that you do and or say. And that's where I've been living since 2001. There's never a moment for me that I forget in my day that this could be the last day that I'm alive. And so what it compels me to do is love as hard as I can and be as authentic as I can in my relationships and in how I live my life. Now, that does not mean that I live it flawlessly or that things are perfect in my life, because most times they're not. Most times I am tripping over myself and over things, and I apologize. I think sometimes I apologize to people from sun up to sundown, because what my heart wants to do and what the Leslie brain does sometimes disconnect. So I wrote the book because I finally realized that most of what I've been going through with depression and anxiety and grief, um, a lot of people are dealing with the same thing. And I have a hope and a journey that I've been on that's been working for me. And I felt like I needed to share that. I feel like I owe God an honest reflection that people can relate to, that they can read and say, maybe somebody can identify with it. Maybe somebody else is sleeping 4 or 5 hours a night and can't figure it out. Maybe somebody else's heart is palpitating during the middle of the night and they can't figure out why. Maybe somebody else is having nightmares and they don't understand what it's coming from or what to do about it. I think so often, and this is no criticism of anybody else, any other book or any other pastor or doctor or anything, but I think so often in our lives we have these beautiful presentations of what should be done. If you're having anxiety, then move forward with it. If you're feeling depressed, then do this or do that. But nobody tells us how. They tell us what we should do, but nobody's giving us any practical things to do. Step 1, do this. Step 2, do that. And so I wanted to just give it a shot and just say, here's what I've done, step by step. These are the things that are working for me. Maybe they'll work for somebody else. That's why I wrote it.
All right. That's very good.
That's a lot of words, I know, right?
Yeah, it is. Definitely, yes.
I was curious, had you written any books prior to 9/11, and had you before that thought of yourself as an author, or was this your first writing experience?
I wanted to be, before I wanted to be Miss Corporate America, I wanted to be Prince's wife. Do you know who Prince is? Do you remember the purple guy? I know when I was younger, I said, I'm going to marry Prince. I'm going to sing and I'm going to dance and I'm going to wow him with my magnificent voice. And my father, in his wisdom, said, no, that's not it. It's not going to happen. So I relied on what I knew, and what I knew and what I know still is business, is managing business platforms and business process and projects and business continuity and change management. So that's what I relied on. I never had a thought in my mind that I would be a writer, author, and that my life would be about emotional, spiritual, and mental wellness. I had no clue. I'm glad that it is. It's an amazing, wonderful surprise. I enjoy every minute of it, but I couldn't have planned this. No, not at all. I didn't see it coming.
Other questions?
Come on,
Good one.
ask.
Good one. You go,
Don't
Debbie.
be shy.
Debbie?
Since you've experienced all this, do you feel like you are better equipped or emotionally able to help other people more? When you get, if you have a friend who has a loved one who dies, or in a situation, do you feel that's helped you do better in those kind of situations?
I think so. I think so. And I tell you why. I don't think I'm an expert in it. I think I'm real in it. I think I have lived out all of the helpful things that we say to people when they lose a loved one or when they have a loss or sudden death. Sandy Hook is not far from my home, and there was a lot of media around that, and a lot of people were saying a lot of good things. And I think for me, it's more about my heart breaks for those who are grieving, and I go in certain that I have no idea what I'm going to say when I get there. Sometimes it's just about sitting and being another person in the room for somebody. Sometimes it's about cleaning and washing dishes and being quiet. And sometimes it's about prayer and listening again. And then when I'm asked, I talk, and I talk from where I've been. For me, I get a lot of pushback from what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it. I don't think that grief is something that we get over. I don't think that when you lose a loved one, that it's something that you're ever going to get over. I think you move past it and you find a new normal in your life. But getting over it and being better doesn't happen. I believe it hurts. And that person's absence in your life hurts for the rest of your life. But it's about finding God's purpose for that. He says, and I say this to myself all the time, He has made me fruitful in my suffering, right? And that's where we get to. And that's where I try to help others get to, is to say, don't try to blot out the person from your life and from your memory like your life is going to be okay, because it's never going to be the same. But God can make us fruitful in those losses and how we help other people as well.
Yeah. One reason I asked that is my youngest brother, 3 years ago, he passed away unexpected. And my sister-in-law, Stephanie and Rick, and I know feel this way too. At first, we didn't know what to do, because it's no matter what we did, it seemed to upset her more. And I know one time she even looked at me, and after I'd been talking a while, and she said, "It hurts so much." I said, "What?" She said, "To look at you, because you've got his eyes."
Mm-hmm.
And so we're finally able to see an improvement with her, or more, like she'll say fakes I'll say, "You seem so happy." I was faking it. I said, well, you faked it real well. You know, at least you used to, you couldn't have done that. And so, you know, I just wonder sometimes, you know, how to reach her more. But what you said was probably good, to just be there.
Yeah, just be there and have no expectation that something is going to, when so her world is shattered, right? And there was a person in her life, a piece of her identity is not there anymore. And so now she has to figure out who she is without that person. What is she going to do? I remember when my sister passed, we used to talk on the phone at night, late at night before I went to bed. And I know it sounds silly, but I couldn't sleep after she passed because I didn't know, okay, what am I going to do with this last hour? You know, there's something missing here, and it was her presence, and it was the conversation. And so I had to figure out, okay, if I'm not the girl that talks to Gail on the phone at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night, who am I? What do I do with this space? What do I do with that part of me? Because that part of me is still here. But I need to figure out what to do with it. And that's where she is. She has to figure out what to do with all that space that is empty. And what we have to do, what we do is tell them, do nothing with it. Let that person still fill it up. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I think our culture and society tells us that when someone passes from here, that we have to forget about them in a way. Not forget about them in the sense that we don't remember them anymore, but move past the pain and the hurt of it and live life without them in it. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I'm not going to talk too much about that because that's a later chapter. And I don't want to get into it too much.
I'd marked when you were talking about how Debbie asked the question about how to help her in the book. On page 13, you talked about the Bible being a tool. You talked about meditation being a tool. What other things would you suggest to use to help others?
In their grieving process, or to help others, or to help ourselves?
Well, I was thinking about helping others that are in the grieving process, and grieving not necessarily just over the loss of a loved one, but you know, a situation. I mean, I've talked with you, and the group here knows about my daughter Lindsay. You know, there's so many reasons people grieve, and I'm like Debbie and Rick and Stephanie to a degree. I struggle sometimes with what kind of tools, and certainly the Bible's a great tool. Meditation's a good tool. Lord knows I sit and ponder, you know, over it. But what other kinds of tools can fit into that category?
Listening is the greatest, biggest tool that we can use. And as long as we have to listen and listen with an open mind to hear what that person is saying, how they want to connect with us, not listening to resolve it or fix it for them. Oftentimes, when we want to help someone, we think about what we can do to ease their pain. And so as they're talking, we're listening to them, but we're solutioning as well. In our mind, we're thinking about, oh, you can do this. Oh, why don't you try that? And I'm not necessarily in agreement that that's the best place to be, the best place to listen from when someone is grieving. I think whether it's grieving the loss of a job or a spouse or a relationship or a loved one, it's really about just being there to listen and to hear their pain. Most people hurting, when they figure out that they can trust you to listen, they'll trust you to do after you've listened. But most people turn us away because they don't feel heard. Am I making sense? And despite our best efforts, because I think we do, we sit down and we listen, but we don't really hear it. Am I making sense, guys? You guys aren't talking.
Yes. Leslie, what my sister-in-law would say a lot, she said, no matter what we would say, she'd say, but you don't. In other words, she just didn't feel that like we could even begin to understand how she felt. And, we felt ours in a different way than her, but that was her first reaction, but you don't.
And the but you don't is really the validation that person needs from everybody to say, they're saying to you, I'm hurting, I'm broken, you don't get it, there's nothing you can do to help me. And our job is to say, you're absolutely right, all of that is true, but I'm here to listen. And then just listen. We want to help. For me, everybody, nobody really knew what to do with what I was going through. And as much as I clinged to God, as much as I said, God is this, and I read my word and I talked about the Lord, there was still a lot of pain in me. And my brothers and sisters, and people from my church, they wanted to help, but nobody knew what to do with that. I think they were relieved that I knew the Lord and that I was looking for answers in the Word of God, because it sort of let them off the hook, because it's huge. And I think that in every grieving process for every person, it's huge. It's 9/11. And that's why the book is titled When Your Towers Fall. Because for everybody, no matter what the pain is or what is causing the pain, it's a tower for you. It doesn't have to be the World Trade Center. Pain is pain. Grief is grief. And who among us can really measure the extent of my pain compared to the extent of somebody else's? So for me, and I believe for God, it's all the same. It's all weighty, and it's all deserving of quiet time, validation, and time for people to really understand the monster that grief is. That's my grandfather clock in the background. I meant to stop the chimes before we started this, and I forgot. Yeah, and they're with my thought. So.
That's okay. Rick.
Well, what I was going to say is, unless you've gone through things like you've gone through, or anyone, it's almost like you don't have credibility to someone who's hurting unless you've had your own hurts. And so I've often thought about, just an example would be, say a young preacher joins the church, comes to a church. How can he help the congregation who may be 50, 60, 70 years old, and he has not really experienced life yet? So in my mind, I would think, how could he help me? I'm 62 years old, and I've been through this and that. How could I sit down with someone like that and him help me? And so the same thing with a friend or a church member that you're trying to help. You almost have credibility if you have suffered. And if you haven't suffered, you haven't experienced maybe the things that you've experienced. Or my sister-in-law, I remember early on, she was going on, and I remember I kind of jumped back to say, I lost a brother too. But it wasn't the same. It wasn't the same.
Why do you feel it wasn't the same?
Well, because I could come home to Stephanie, and she
lost a spouse.
She lost a spouse. So it is different. I thought at the time it wasn't that different, but it is. So I just try to say that general thing to say that you have to have credibility in a way. You have to have experienced loss to be able to help someone, I think, besides just listening. And listening is huge. But it would be be nice to throw in something every now and then, maybe to help someone, or to cry with them or whatever, and really understand some of their loss anyway. That's just my thought.
I appreciate your thought. And it's a valid one, it's a good one. I think that I think it's society that has fed us for years that unless you've been there, you don't know. Unless you have had or experienced the same thing that I've experienced, then you don't know what I'm experiencing. And I challenge that because I say, if you were in the Twin Towers on 9/11 and you were walking right next to me, your experience would be different than mine because your perspective is different, because everything that brought you to that place at that point in time was different. So what you felt, what you smelled, what you saw, what maintained itself in your psyche would still be vastly different from mine. So even if you had lost your spouse, your experience would be different from hers, even simply by virtue of her spouse was a man, yours would be a woman. So even starting from there, none of us will ever have the exact same experience as anyone else. It's just impossible. And I think in a lot of ways that keeps us from one another, that keeps us from embracing and rushing into the room and say, hey, I may not have been in a burning building before, but my kitchen caught fire. You know, I may not have been in a, falling tower, but I got hit by a car. It's the comparisons that trip us up, because you have to remember, pain is pain to the person that's hurting. There's no varying degrees of it. You lost your brother, she lost her husband. The loss is the loss, and the pain is where the two of you can connect.
Yeah, okay.
Your heartbreak, even with me or with someone else, being able to listen and hear the person is only step one, because you know what happens when we listen? We hear the connections. We hear where we can make the connection. It comes to light when we let them talk and when we let them vent and we say, you're absolutely right. That's what happened to you. And I understand that. And I hear you and I feel you. Here's what happened to me. Or maybe not even share what happened to you. Maybe just listen and then later share, or help that person move forward. Because it's, no matter what it is, no matter what the loss is, it's all about identity and who we are. It all boils down to one thing. Who am I without that thing? And that's what trips us all up. That's what the grieving process is about. I get it. I lost this person, but I also lost a part of me. So who am I if you rip that piece out of me? So yes, it's your husband, but it's your brother, and a part of you is missing too. We're both empty. Let's connect there. Something has been ripped out of our lives. I have a friend who, I call her my friend. She went through foreclosure about 3 years ago and lost her home. And when I met her, she was talking to me about the foreclosure, and I was listening to all of the pain that she was going through. And I so identified with some of the things that she was saying, not because I lost my home, which I did, but from the perspective that I lost my spouse. I heard her grief. I heard her struggling to let go of the memories that she built in that home with her family. I heard her talking about how Thanksgiving dinner when her kids were 14 years old, and that's a grieving, that's a loss, that's an emptiness. And that's the question. What she's saying is, who am I if I'm not the person who owns this home? Where do I make my memories now? When the house is gone, the memories are gone. And that's the mourning, that's the loss. When the brother is gone, when the spouse is gone, the memories are gone. That part of me is gone. What that person brought to my life is gone, but it doesn't have to be. Am I making sense, or do you feel like I'm talking in circles?
No, I agree, and it's definitely a void. Like you were talking
Yeah.
about talking to someone. Was it a friend or someone at 11 o'clock at night, and then you were talking about earlier?
My sister.
Sister, yeah.
Mhm.
So I guess so we've got to figure out how, I guess we can fill that void. And like Mike was unique. So how do we replace it? And we don't replace him. And I'll tell you, it's so interesting how the Lord works. Early on, I didn't think about him as much. And I believe that's because he knew I couldn't handle it. 2 years later, I started thinking more and more. So it's really interesting how the Lord really doesn't put more on you than you really can handle. If you just let it work, I really believe that.
Yeah, yeah. And you don't fill the void. You don't. Your new normal becomes a person with a void. I think we get stuck because we're trying to replace, we're trying to fill a place that can never be filled. Nothing will ever fill your brother's place. Nothing. You are now a person with a void. That's who you are now, right? And you can bring other things into your life that will make you feel fulfilled in other ways. But when it comes to that relationship, you'll never have it again because he's not here anymore. And rather than trying to fill it, it's best to embrace it and just say, he's gone. And I'm going to always feel this way. So what do I do with this? That's the question. What do I do with this void? You can't fill it up. All you can do is acknowledge that it's there and be that person. Be that person. And it's okay to be that person because there are hundreds and thousands of people across the world with a void who need to know you're not the only person living with a void. You're not the only person living with a piece of you that is gone. And that's the beauty of God. That's the beauty of it. He makes us connect with each other. He's created us to be a part of each other. And he is the one that fills us all up, and he never leaves. We were never supposed to be separated. It was never intended to be that way. So it will never be okay to be that way. Your resolve is to set your treasure in heaven. Your resolve is, one of the things I do is I write things down in my journal that I want to share with my sister when I get to heaven. I know I'm going to say, girl, in February, you should have been at dinner. I know, because that's my treasure now. I'm looking forward to the day that she and I can talk again. And I just believe I'll have so much to tell her, you know? That may or may not be true, but it's a nice way to deal with that she's gone.
Right.
That is really good.
Mm-hmm.
So from that, because we talked about the pain and the trauma chapter wise, in chapter 3 you deal specifically with forgiveness, and I haven't experienced.
Before we go there, can I ask a question of everybody?
Sure.
Who else on the call is dealing with a loss, any kind of loss? Anybody else? You can answer next week if you feel more comfortable. You'll get used to this phase.
Yeah, I think loss, I'm going to go out on a limb and say when you're talking about loss, it's not just the loss of a person, but it could be the loss in any kind of loss, relationship, or just for me, sometimes it's the loss of the way things used to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. Others may feel they have something to contribute to that. Willis, you and Sue are just soaking it up tonight, and
They're so quiet.
they're normally pretty talkative. Loss? Anybody want to talk about loss?
I think
Yes.
we're all feeling a certain kind of loss, a different kind of loss. The virus. I mean, just the freedom to, go to church and worship and hop in the car and go shopping. I mean, this is obviously different, but it's this is a loss just from what we're all going through, having to be at home a lot.
Yeah.
Especially they talk about extroverts and how this is really hard. People that are used to getting out and going and doing and seeing people and interacting, it's a different kind of loss that we're all experiencing right now, I think.
Yeah, I agree. We're losing our culture in our society as we've known it, as we've always known it. Things are changing, and they change suddenly. It was like a sudden death, wasn't it? Like suddenly we were not allowed to hug anymore. We were not allowed to go out anymore. It was a loss, and it was sudden, and we weren't prepared for it. And believe me, not believe me, I believe that there will be periods of mourning and grieving, because I don't see that our culture will ever be what it once was. I think there's going to be a lot of changes that's going to cause more people to feel depressed and lost and alone, and they won't understand that grieving loss is not just about the loss of a loved one. It's about losing something that's a part of you. And if going to ShopRite or Walmart every Wednesday was a part of you, and you can't do that, we grieve those things.
I saw today on the news where a healthcare worker, somebody who had been frontline healthcare worker, committed suicide. And I think we'll probably hear more. I mean, there's that sense of trauma that they're enduring day in and day out. And the sheer numbers of people who are losing family members, there's that sense of loss is going to touch all of us at some point. And I know, Leslie, you're in an area that I think is has a higher rate of confirmed cases and probably death than we do here.
Yeah, I'm in New York, and so yeah, it's different here. It's
yeah.
It's different here.
Yeah. So loss can mean a lot of different things. I want to make sure before we run out of time, I want to talk about chapter 3 and the radical forgiveness.
Can I open my book? Because I have it right here.
Yeah. I put little sticky notes all on mine.
Did you? Oh my gosh, look at you! I'm afraid you know more about it than I do at this point.
No. They can tell you that's how I function, and oftentimes I do different colored sticky notes for each chapter.
Sticky notes are very intimidating to me.
I won't show them to you next week.
I'm afraid of sticky notes. That means you know a lot. You were probably the kid in school who got all the good grades, didn't you?
I have a lot of questions. It's not that I know a lot. Those are questions.
Okay.
Questions.
Kathy, you missed your calling to be a teacher because sticky notes are teachers' best friend. So.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Yeah, Stephanie was a teacher as well as Sandy, and so we're surrounded by teachers. So yeah, the whole idea of radical forgiveness and taking back our power by forgiving, because forgiving is hard. Forgiving is really hard when you feel like you've been wronged or somebody has wronged someone that you love. Forgiving is like, I don't know. It's hard.
I guess it starts with I think it starts with what you think forgiveness is, right? So can we talk about that? I mean, I think that we've always defined, if we forgive someone who hurt us, then we're sort of saying that we're letting them off the hook, and it's okay. Not okay that they've done it, but it is, we're going to let them off the hook, and we're going to forget about it, and we're going to move on. And that's kind of how we've learned. I don't know if everybody's learned that, but that's the way I learned forgiveness, is that it's just, you just forget about it and you move on from it. And I went to a hearing after 9/11, and some of the, I'm struggling to remember who was there, but it was one of the terrorists, someone, and we were watching it via live stream in a courtroom setting from New York, from Manhattan. And the man that was testifying, I can't remember his name. I'll remember it for you for next week. The man that was testifying said that if it had been his plan, he would have made sure that there were gunmen at every exit of the building, so that the people who were leaving the building never got a chance to see the light of day. And up until that point, everybody kept telling me, it's not personal, it's not personal. You were just in the building, and you gotta forgive, and you've gotta put this behind you. And I was in agreement with that until I heard him say that. And when he said that, it became so personal. I was no longer just another number in the tower. When I was 16 years old, I was on my way home from school. I was in high school, and I was attacked at gunpoint, and that was personal to me, for me. And for years, I could not forgive what happened to me or what he did to me. And at 9/11, when I was sitting there in that hall or courtroom or whatever it was, listening to that testimony, all of those things came back to me. And all of that anger built up inside of me. And I wanted them all to die and go to hell. I really did. And I'm not proud of that. When I say it right now, I don't say it like, ooh, I say it still with a heavy heart. Because when I think about it, it still feels much the same that it did when I heard him say that, and when I heard those footsteps coming racing up behind me. So I practice every day. Not every day, because I'm not offended every day, but I practice forgiveness of things that hurt me. And I change the perspective of forgiveness from letting that person off the hook to letting me off the hook. I don't want to hurt no more. I don't want to, every time I think about this, I don't want to have to go through this. What is it in me that I can change about me that will make this pain go away? Guess what? Nothing. Nothing. Because nothing will ever undo what was done. And it's always going to hurt. But I don't have to let it change who I am. I don't have to make me stop living and stop loving and stop forgiving. It's a conscious effort. It's a choice to let it go. Let it go. That's the piece we have to let go. The anger, let it go. That's forgiveness. The resentment, the wanting that person to pay or to be punished When we don't do that, we're just playing the same game. Kathy, can you read there's a part in the chapter towards the end about putting it down and letting it go. Does everybody have their book?
Uh-huh.
On 28, page 28.
28, chapter 4.
We're talking about forgiveness, chapter 3.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I must have a large print version because mine stops at chapter 3.
Your what stops at chapter 3?
Chapter 3 stops on 25 for me.
Oh, you know what? I have the author copy. So mine is a little different. I'm sorry.
Okay, no, yeah, if you'll just kind of give me a little bit, I'll find it.
Sure. Don't get me wrong.
Tag there too.
Don't get me wrong. Having the strength to let go is important, and your psychological well-being absolutely matters. Do you see that?
I do see that.
Can you read that?
In fact, I have written all around that.
Oh my gosh! Look, you sure have. Can you read? Can you read all the way to? It's going to be a lot.
Okay. How far?
What you are saying is that you will not be a victim anymore.
Kathy, what page is that on?
Page 21. Okay. Page 21 near the top. Y'all find it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yep. Don't get me wrong. Having the strength to let go is important, and your psychological well-being absolutely matters. But how you forgive, when you forgive, and the fact that you forgive is critical to a healthy mind and a life that works. Forgiveness is the way to yield to the unpredictable lawfulness of life and receive lawfulness of life and receive the strength to face change and loss and death with a willingness to say, this too is life. We bear it as we find it, even while doing everything in our power to make our connectedness a safer, gentler experience. I know this is a huge ask. I know that it's probably the last thing you want to do right now. But believe me when I tell you, even though forgiving someone who deeply hurt you is no doubt one of the hardest things you'll ever have to do, it's equally one of the most essential. What's your alternative? Sleepless nights?
Okay, let's stop right there.
Okay.
When we don't forgive, something happens inside of us. The other person, they're not thinking about us. They're not worried about what we're thinking. They've gone on with their life. They're probably offending more people. We're the ones that are not sleeping. We're the ones that are not eating. We're the one whose blood pressure is going up. There is a lawfulness of life, and it's unpredictable. Life is going to happen whether we agree with it or not. And rather than pushing against it to make it go the way that we want it to go, it's best to just relax. And we don't necessarily enjoy the whole ride, but be on the ride. Be in every minute of it. If we allow the person who we can't forgive continue in our hearts, we're robbing the people around us of a piece of our heart. They're not getting it. You know why? Because you've given it to the person that you won't forgive. They're still holding you a victim. You can let go, or you can continue to hurt. You can continue to stay up all night. You can continue to cry. You can continue to be angry about it, or you can let it go. My brother said to me, don't worry about it. God's got it. I didn't want God to have it. I wanted to have it. I wanted to have it in the palm of my fist. I wanted to have it. I think God is I think he's better at vengeance than I could ever be, because there's a big picture to it, you know? And the big picture is Me, I'm the big picture, and I'm worth it. I'm worth letting it go. You're worth letting it go. If you're struggling to forgive somebody, it's not worth it for them. Who cares about them? What about you? How are you living your life to the fullest? I'll let you continue to read because you're very time conscious, aren't you? You're looking at the clock.
No, I hadn't looked
You're
at
not?
it.
Okay.
Actually, I can now, but yeah, we're good.
Okay, go ahead.
We're good. We're good. What's your alternative? Sleepless nights, fear, anxiety, depression, a chest so tightly filled with bitterness and anger that it might explode? Do you think the size of the offense matters? Maybe your pain feels more intense than others because your offender was a family member or a trusted friend. You feel betrayed, so you feel no obligation to. That's a hard one. You feel betrayed, so you feel no obligation to forgive. Why should you give such a horrible person such a beautiful gift? Again, forgiveness is the gift you give yourself. It is the one thing that unties the chain that keeps you linked to the person and the pain. In no way does forgiveness ever suggest that you're on the same page with someone who hurt you. God forbid. What you are saying is that you will not be a victim anymore. You are saying that you choose to live despite someone or some things' best efforts to steal your life away.
Life is about freedom. It's about living it to the fullest. And I learned that on September 11th. I had so many regrets. Once I was clear and my clock's getting ready to chime. I'm gonna stop it. It was gonna be really loud. Sorry. Once I came to myself and I realized so much, I had to make a decision whether I was going to live or whether I was going to be just alive. I'm just going to exist here. I'm just going to be alive until I die. Or am I going to live? And living life is about freedom. It's about taking off the chains and all of the chains, not just the ones that we want to take off, the ones that we don't want to take off too. Taking them off and saying, I'm going to be free of this. I'm going to be free of this. There's a writer, it's John Paul, what's his name? He said, freedom is what you do with what's been done to you.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do with that? What do you do with that? What do you do with what's been done to you, especially when what has been done to you is hurtful? What do you do with that? You have to be free of that in order to live life to the fullest, in order to really know the freedom of Christ, the freedom of God, all of the amazing things that God has planned for us. We've got to open our hearts and detox. That's another chapter. I'm getting ahead of myself. We've got to get rid of all of that stuff. That's how we forgive. So we start talking in chapter 3 about the fact that we have to forgive. And then later on, we start talking about how do we do that? What are the things that we need to do? There's a step-by-step at the end of this book about step-by-step, take this step, do this, do that. I talk a lot about giggling, a lot about laughing, a lot about the hormones. I think God has this amazing brain. I can't wait to meet him. He has this amazing way of healing us naturally. There are hormones and endorphins that release themselves into our brain that actually make us feel better, that actually singing, scientists are now finding that, I'm getting ahead of myself again, singing in a choir is good for us, and that it releases something that's similar to Oxycontin, right? A real chemical that people get addicted to, and they want to sing more. And I think, and when I read that, I was like, oh my goodness, that's why, when you see rock stars, we say, oh yeah, they want to get on the stage, they're addicted to it. It's that endorphin that gets released that God put there for us. But if we're all bogged down with all the muck and the messiness that life is giving us, then who wants to sing? I don't feel like going to sing. Oh, goodness gracious, listen, Linda, I ain't going to sing nothing. I want to be angry, but we don't. I want to be resentful. I want to be bitter. I want this person to pay for what they did to me. I don't want this person to be off the hook. Okay, then don't let them off the hook and don't forgive. It's always our choice. What happens between what happens to us and what we do about what happens to us, there's this whole span of making a choice.
I like what you say about life being like a flow. Kind of like the way you said that, and I kind of like the way you said, which is not original, but it is certainly the truth. We make our decisions and we live by what happens of the decisions we make. That's a simplicity that I do like.
Yeah.
Life.
Yeah. Yeah. The cool thing about it is that I've never had an original thought. None of us have.
No.
You know, we're just repeating what's been proven. The word says, you know, there's nothing new under the sun. It's nothing new. You know, it's all been said before. We're just restating stuff that's true and proven. But it becomes new and it becomes real.
Leslie, I had
life changes. Go ahead.
when I used to teach, this has been years ago, but I had assistant principal, and when he would do announcements in the morning, he'd always close with "Make it a great day or not, it's up to you."
I like that.
Yeah,
I like that.
And it's good for kids too.
Yeah, yeah, because it is up to us. Ultimately, it is. You know, yeah, ultimately, it is up to us. I can live in all of the things my parents did wrong. I can live with my sister's death. I was not very good to my sister. I didn't love her as well as I could have or as I should have. And that's painful. We don't get a do-over, but we get a do-right. We get to do it right. We get to discover it and do better with those that are with us. And there is where there is therefore no condemnation to those who are in Christ Jesus. He does not hold us accountable forever to the wrongs of our past and the mistakes that we've made. We're not punished for being deceived. We're punished for being sinful, right? So when we know the truth, it's the truth that sets us free and we do better. So I was not good to my sister. Guess what? My niece now thinks I'm phenomenal. You know? So I'm doing better by her. I didn't do so great for your mom, so I'm going to do better by you in her name, in remembrance of my sister. I've learned a lesson and I'm gonna do better. Do I get it right all the time? Nah, not all the time. But I do try, and I do call her and say, hey, forgot to call you last week, you know, or I text her and say, hey, are you still around? You know, you're awake, what you doing? And that's the cool thing about forgiveness, Kathy, and living life free, is that it opens us up to so much more, so many things. You know, I've been looking at Stephanie and Alfred, right?
Stephanie and Rick.
Rick.
Yes.
Rick. Okay.
Yes.
Stephanie Alfred is the last name. Alfred.
Already. Yeah.
Alfred. All right. So I have the glasses on. I'm just not a good reader, I guess. So there's a painting behind you, and it's flowers, and it reminds me of a painting that we had in my home when I was a little girl. And I used to sit, my mom had it, and I'd sit and look at it for hours and hours and hours as if something was going to change. And now looking back at how I looked at that painting and how I'm looking at the one behind you is exactly how we should live life. It's the same life, but there's always something different in it when we really open up and see life for what it is. You can appreciate the strokes. At 12, 10 years old, I wasn't looking at the strokes. I was just staring at the flowers, but life is that way, staring at it, getting to know it, being a part of it, being active in it. Yeah, it's the same life, but there's so many different strokes and so many different colors and so many variations and perspectives to look at. And it just sits on the wall and we just forget about it. We walk past life every day. We walk through life every day and we forget to stop and appreciate all of the beauty that's in it. And so I would ask you, how many times do you walk past that painting every day now? Because it's been there so long, probably, that you don't even look at, you probably don't see it as beautiful as you did the day you bought it. And I believe that's what God wants us. He wants us to look at our lives every day as beautiful as it is or was the day we came to know him. And that requires us to live free. That was a long way to get to where I just went.
Okay.
Good. So the last chapter that we've read this week was Slow Down to Move Forward. How do you pronounce
Shalosham.
the Jewish rite?
Shalosham.
Shalosham?
Yes, before I talk about what that is, my next door neighbor, can I say this? I don't want to out him, so I won't talk about it too much. But my next door neighbor is a rabbi, right? And he is huge in our community. And I said to when I moved here, when I bought the house, I met him, and he was a nice guy, and he found out I was a born again Christian, and I found out he was a rabbi, and I had a ton of questions for him. Tell me about this. Tell me about that, because I just want to know all there is to know about God and learn who Jesus is and how he fulfills the prophecy. And he started teaching me, but he started teaching me thinking that I wanted to convert to Judaism. Last year, right before the holidays, he accepted Jesus Christ as his Savior. And he is now, yes. I will have him come over or join us one night to talk about his story. But he has not fully come out to the community yet. So I don't want to talk names or talk too much. But Shalosham is something that he and I talked about and other things. And I thought it was such a beautiful thing. There's so many things in the Jewish culture that are relevant and could be useful in our walk as followers of Jesus Christ. I, by the way, do not call myself a Christian, but don't get alarmed. So, Kathy, you had a question about yours?
Yeah, it was an interesting practice. I don't know a great deal about the Jewish faith, and I have some clients who are Jewish, and so I picked up a few things, but I had never heard of this one, and this idea of giving yourself 30 days to like grieve and deal with the pain and the anger and the frustration and the void and whatever, and then like toss it over your shoulder and move on. That the gist of that?
Yeah, yes and no. It's not really toss it over your shoulder and move on. It's about finding that identity. So remember we talked about, and these chapters are aligned because one chapter answers a question asked or solves a problem from the previous chapter. So we talked about our identity in one of the earlier chapters. We talked about the trauma monster and how it robs us. Grief robs you of your identity. Who am I if I'm not this person that has this life? And Shalosham, what it does is it opens us up to knowing and finding that identity. It is that period of time where you sit quiet and you say, there's a void that's always going to be here. What do I do now? Who am I with this void? What do I call this void? Do I give it a name? Do I run from it? God forbid. You don't run from it. You acknowledge that it's there. And you redefine your life and the opportunity as a person with a void. There's so many voids that by the time we get to glory, there's going to be so many bits and pieces of us missing. He makes us whole. It's him that makes us whole. Does that make sense? And so we go to him with all these missing pieces that are a result of the choices that we made from the beginning, from sin, from when sin entered into the world. It brought with it consequences. It was never intended for us that man should be alone, that we should separate from one another, but that we would live eternally with one another and with our Father God. That was always the plan, and that's where we return to. In the meantime, back at the ranch, we messed up. So we've got some consequences to live with, but he redeems us from the pain of it. The pain is inevitable. The suffering is a choice. Let's do this. Let's everybody do this. The pain is inevitable. The suffering is the choice. We don't have to suffer. And Shaloshim helps us identify all of that. It helps us sort through. How does it do it? By just, we cut off everything around. They cut off everything around them. They cut off mirrors, so they don't even look at themselves. They don't celebrate birthdays, holidays, no fancy food. People don't say, how are you feeling? It's really deep. It's really deep. And it's necessary because the focus is all about your heart and how you move forward in your life as a person with a void, or as a person with a chunk of your heart missing. What do we call that? What do you call that now, Mr. Allred and Shelly? No, it's not Sherry. Deborah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you call that now? What do you call that void? When you refer to it, what do you call it? Where your brother's missing?
Well, I don't really I don't look at it that way. What it did, one of the things it did, we were close anyway, all four of us. We got a sister Kathy, so Mike, Kathy, Debbie, and myself. When we lost Mike, we got tighter. We were pretty tight to start with.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is a good thing that has come out of this. If you want to find a good thing.
Yeah.
I don't know, Debbie, what do you?
I think I'm finally to the point. I have, like, his birthday was March the 25th. That was rough. But I'm finally to the point that I can laugh. I mean, and we did this not long ago. Mention something. Well, Mike would have said this, you know, and bring it in and laugh about things that happened, and like he used to sit on the end of the pew where I did at church. It took me a long time to see him there, you know, and now, you know, the pain's not there anymore when I go to church and he's missing. But my void is really more good memories, and
say it again. Your void is more what?
The void is more like good memories now, and how blessed we were to have him, and blessed that our family, like I mentioned Rick on his birthday, Debbie, Kathy, Rick, and Mike are still here.
Yeah.
His body's not here, but that bond will never break that we had, four of us.
Do you still cry when you miss him?
Sometimes.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Are you writing down things that you want to tell him when you see him again?
I haven't thought about that, but that's a very good idea.
And I only say that because I've lost now my brother, 3 sisters, my nephew,
Wow.
my aunt, my mom, my dad, my uncle, all in the past few years.
Wow.
Wow.
And what helps me, I read, so I have this fantasy going on. Let's back up a little bit. And I'm over time, so just stop me.
Okay.
I have this thing, when I was committed to the psychiatric ward, I believed that the Holy Spirit audibly spoke to me and I would speak back, and the doctors used that against me, and they said that it was part of my psychosis, is that I thought I was hearing the voice of God. And I know now that I was having an audible conversation with an angel, or so now I still have those conversations. I don't hear it back audibly, but when my sister's death, her passing, it really hurt me. It really struck me. And that next year, when my brother died, and then the year after that, my other sister died, and the year after that, my other sister died, and the year after that, my nephew died, I said, Lord, what is this gift of pain that you've decided I should have? May I give it back to you? As politely as I could possibly say it. And I opened the Bible and it said, lay up your treasures in heaven, for where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. And I was, interestingly enough, when I was talking to him about giving him that gift back, I was talking about how much I treasured my conversation, and I used the word treasured, my conversation with my sister when I had it. So when I read that, I said, aren't you cute? You just really just answered me back. So I started writing things when things happen, and at night when I'm missing the conversation with her, and I call it Gail time, right? I still do to this day. I started calling it Gail time after she passed. So at night during Gail time, I will watch Perry Mason, or I will write her notes from things that happened during the day or the week that I would have told her, and I keep it into a little red book that I keep saying to myself, when I see her again, I'm going to tell her all of these things that are in the book. And it gives me a nice thought, because it places her in a place where I know I'm going to see her again, and that void is just a little bit less painful, because I'm now, rather than looking back, I'm looking forward. So I'm not looking back on all the memories that I had. I'm making new memories for her in the future.
Yeah. But Leslie, you talking about that made me think, I don't have that void now, but I have the fear of the next time. Like, I know how bad it hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And has something happened to Rick or Stephanie, my sister.
Mm-hmm.
That, I think that's where my weakness is. I can't let go of that.
There's a chapter coming up. Chapter 16 is talked about loving well. And so that we don't have that same pain. The pain comes for 2 reasons, for more than one reason. One of them is regret, because inevitably we think about the things we could have done, we should have said, and now we can't say it anymore. So with the people that are still here, say exactly what you think. Say exactly what you feel. Be a fool for them, you know? People tell me all the time, God, it's just too much, because I am all in about love. I am not playing. I am not playing. I will meet you today and love you tomorrow. Oh, I love you. Because I don't want to die and you not know. I don't want to. It's not a warm, fuzzy feeling. It's a commitment. I'm here for you for the long run. So yeah, I'm jumping in with both feet. And I don't care if you think I'm crazy. You think I'm crazy because I said, oh, I just love you. You want to think it? That's fine. but I won't have any more regrets. I'm going to live life to the fullest. What do you think? What do you think Jesus did all the time? All the time. He was showing and telling about his love and his Father's love. Every place he went, he stirred up a whole lot of stuff doing it, but he did it all. He did it. And that's the blueprint of how followers of Christ are supposed to live. I said before, I don't call myself a Christian because I think there are so many negative connotations around it. People think Christians are, the minute you say you're a Christian, people shut the door. They don't want to hear what you have to say. Oh, you're hypocrites, you're this, you're that. And they don't want to hear what you have to say, even if what you have to say is genuine and real. So I said, I'm going to take that off the table. I'm not going to call myself a Christian. I'm going to call myself a disciple of Jesus Christ. I'm a follower of Jesus Christ because that's what he said. He said, go and make disciples of them. So I'm a disciple. And you know what I find? That when I say, oh, yeah, well, I'm a disciple of Christ, I'm a follower of Christ, they say, what does that mean? And now the door is open. I got you now. You know? So it's all of, those little things and, opening up to that and living that hard so that I can fully take advantage and that you can fully take advantage of every moment that you have. You have a beautiful wife, sitting next to you, wonderful husbands, great friends, a beautiful painting behind you. Love it, embrace it, feel it, appreciate it, so that, God forbid, tomorrow morning, if that person's not there, there's no question and there's no regret, Debbie. There's none, because you've loved well. You've loved well, and it's something you can be happy about and say, you have no should've, no would've, no could've, because you did everything. Not that you did everything right, but that you did everything. You said, hey, you know what? I love you today with your little annoying self. I still love you. You certainly are opinionated today, but I love you,
And we got a lot of hugging to do when this virus is over.
A lot of
We do that all
hugging
the time, and that's hard.
I've never been a hugger.
Oh, I
I've
do.
been a hugger, and my son is a big hugger. He's 31, and he's a huge hugger. Huge. It's like, hey, mom. Here we go. Socially distant. This is a win-win for me. Socially distant, yeah. I have an excuse, but
You'd have a hard time here because we're all huggers.
oh well, I'm gonna come visit you guys and
We're hugging you right
we'll
now.
hug, yeah.
No, it comes from the depths of our hearts.
I love that. I love that. I will not refuse a hug. I just won't initiate one.
Okay.
I don't even think about doing it.
Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay. So did anybody have anything else you want to bring up, talk about in the first 4 chapters? We can certainly pick up if you think of things between now and next week. Leslie, this has been amazing. And before we leave, I want you to close our group with a prayer, if you would. But anybody wanted anything else you want to bring up, talk about? This is
I feel like I did all the talking and nobody talked.
We will. I trust you. Trust us.
When are you going to talk?
Yeah, we will. We'll talk more. I think everybody's sort of in awe. I mean, I get really excited when I talk about you and the impact that you've had on me personally.
Aww.
And so, I mean, they've all heard me talk about that and you, and just anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, I want you guys to really ask, when you're reading, really ask the questions about, what you see in the book, and get specific and challenge. I really want you guys to challenge and ask the questions that are not there as well as the ones that are there, because there's a lot that's implied in these chapters. There's a lot said, and it's like it's not new thinking. I think it's just a lot of brave talk, right? It's things that sometimes we don't want to say, because it just doesn't go along with the norm of, what conventional wisdom or thinking tells us to do. It tells us to, 5 stages of grief and then move on with your life. And I'm saying, yeah, nope, that's not the truth. That's not the truth. Those stages of grief are infinite. It's just, naming that void that, Gail left and Michael left, and not feeling it, but recognizing that, I'm a person with holes now, and that only God fills me up.
Thank you. Thank you. If you will have our closing prayer, we would be very grateful for you to do that.
Sure. Father, you are holy, and you are righteous, and you are good, and you are careful and concerned and considerate, and you see every one of us individually and corporately. You see our needs, you see our desires, our hopes, our fears, the things that we struggle with, the things that we wrestle with, the things that we contend with, the things that stay on our minds and keep us up in the middle of the night, the things that we're afraid of, the things that make us rejoice, the things that make us call your name. You see it all. You know it all. And Lord, as we gathered here today, I know that you have gathered with us, that you have been with us from the beginning, and you will be with us throughout, Lord. We thank you for your presence here today. We thank you for the things that are written in this book, and we ask you, Father, that as the weeks go on, that you would enlighten us, that your Holy Spirit would speak to us, Lord, that you would give us meaning to the things that we encounter on a daily basis, the challenges that we face. Enlighten us, Father. Show us your ways. Teach us your ways, your thoughts, Lord. And then help us to live them out. To not just know your ways, but to walk in your ways. To live according to the way that you have charged us to live. To be salt and to be light. And to inspire hope in a world we know is searching. What we know is you. What we know is you, and we believe you. We believe your ways. So Lord, as we, the next 5 weeks, as we tackle chapter for chapter, teach us outside the box, Lord. Don't limit us to the things that were written here. Thank you for the new friendships, Lord. And as this week goes by, Lord, I pray that you would be with every person, be their comfort, continue to speak into their minds, continue to speak into their lives where they're hurting, Lord. I pray that you would comfort them. Where there are voids, Lord, I pray, Lord, that you would fill them, that you would illuminate. Where there's hopelessness, Lord, restore hope. Where there are hidden tears and secrets, Lord, will you send your Holy Spirit? Even now, we ask these things, Lord, because your word has compelled us to do so. And when we come knowing that you have heard us and that you have provided for us. And so together we say, thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord, for hearing our prayers. Thank you for answering our prayers. Thank you for being at the center of our lives. Thank you for choosing us to be yours. Thank you for your Holy Spirit that dwells with us. Thank you for new friendships and new ideas and new books to read. Lord, and thank you for laughter and for your Son, Jesus Christ, for salvation and eternity. We thank you and we praise you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Wow.
Thank you. Thank you, Leslie.
Thank you.
Thank you
You're
for
so
coming.
welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming into our lives.
You're so, you do speak. He does speak.
Hey, Leslie, I think we all were in awe of you this week, but now we're in a New York state of mind. So
Good. Good.
next week,
Good. Next week, I'll take off some of the magic powder. I just did this because it was the first time we're meeting. It won't be next week. Next week, you'll see the freckles and
thank you
everything.
so much. Thank you.
Thank you for putting that on. Yeah, you're
Oh,
so
no.
welcome.
Good evening.
I enjoyed it.
Bye-bye.
Have a good week.
All right.
You
Thanks,
too.
everybody. Leslie,
Bye-bye.
I'll message you afterwards about the recording. And next week was 4 chapters good? Can we do 4 again next week?
I think for us.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Good. All right. 4 again. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Right.
Bye.
Everybody's going to have a lot of questions and comments next week, right?
Right.
Okay, good. Okay, good.
All right. Thanks,
All right,
everybody.
thank you.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.